Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So we're going to begin our program. We request all the brothers, alhamdulillah, the past few series that we had, everyone was on their best behavior, so we hope to keep that up, especially for the sisters upstairs. For the sisters upstairs who have probably brought their children, please have your children sit next to you or accompany them in the back so that the sisters that are present in the masjid, they can benefit from the program, inshallah. We will begin the program shortly with Qari Yusuf's recitation. He will recite a portion of the Quran. After his recitation, we will continue with the program, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا إنه هو السميع البصير. وآتينا موسى الكتاب وجعلناه هدى لبني إسرائيل ألا تتخذوا من دوني وكيلا. ذرية من حملنا مع نوح إنه كان عبدا شكورا. وقضينا إلى بني إسرائيل في الكتاب لتفسدن في الأرض مرتين ولتعلن علوا كبيرا. فإذا جاء وعد أولاهما بعثنا شديد بعثنا عليكم عبادا لنا أولي بأس شديد فجاسوا خلال الديار وكان وعدا مفعولا ثم رددنا لكم الكرة عليهم وأمددناكم بأموال وبنين وجعلناكم أكثر نفيرا إن أحسنتم أحسنتم لأنفسكم وإن أسأتم فلها فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة ليسوءوا وجوهكم وليدخلوا المسجد كما دخلوه أول مرة وليتبروا ما علوا تتبيرا عسى ربكم أن يرحمكم وإن عدتم عدنا وجعلنا جهنم للكافرين حصيرا إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما ويدعو الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم صدق الله العظيم.
Before we begin, we have a truck that's blocking 2 cars. The truck's license plate is KPM 3454. So if you have a black truck with license plate KPM 3454, please move your truck. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Looking around in the masjid, there are a lot of youngsters. Many of them, if you ask them about Palestine, about Palestine, this actually might be the first time where they're hearing about the contention that's taking place between Muslims or the humans versus the people who are trying to, I guess, annihilate human beings. This is almost their first time they're introduced to this whole notion. Us who are a little bit older, we know for the past few decades, this war between, I guess, the Zionists and those who want to conquer or, kick out and eradicate the Muslims, this has been happening for 7-8 decades now. Now the question is, first and foremost, why is Masjid al-Aqsa in this tug of war? Why is it that this started all of a sudden? People think that this tug of war started in 1948. Technically did not. It started in 1967, and we'll get to why 1967. But the first thing we need to understand, where did Masjid al-Aqsa come from? If you remember 3 weeks ago when we spoke about Makkah, Medina, and Masjid al-Aqsa and how they all differ, in the dialogue that Allah Azza wa Jal uses to address all three, it's different in the Quran. When Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about Makkah and Medina, He speaks about ibadah, He speaks about amn, He speaks about safety, He speaks about ruku', He speaks about sujood. So when Allah speaks about Makkah and Medina, it's as if it's a facet of faith, of ubudiyah, of worship. Now when He speaks about Masjid al-Aqsa in the Quran, He speaks using words of ghalaba. He speaks of words of sultana, that it's a source of conquering, it's a place of siyasa, of politics, of kind of kingdomship, superiority. When Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about Makkah, Masjid al-Aqsa, it's different. And you get that when you read and recite the Quran, because Allah Azza wa Jalla refers to both in different dialogues, in different kind of rhetoric. Now we understand Makkah, we understand Medina. Now Masjid al-Aqsa, the first masjid ever built, Makkah. Now the question is, when was Masjid al-Aqsa built? That's the question. Because technically speaking, the Kaaba, Makkah, was built by who? Adam alayhi salam. Adam alayhi salam was the one who actually built Makkah. Kaaba was built by Adam alayhi salam. Now you have to remember history. And this is something very, very important, because there's one facet of our lives that distinguish us from animals, from humans, from animals. What is it? It's the ability or the mode of transmitting feelings and emotions. Animals can't tell one another what happened 10 years ago, but humans can articulate to one another what took place 1,000 years ago. An animal can't tell another animal that 50 years in this place, at this time, such and such person did X, Y, and Z to that person. But humans can do that. That's why it's important and essential that humans, we start learning history. We sit in dialogue and have a discourse and a debate with someone. The first thing he's going to ask us was what? Who was the Prime Minister in 1948? The first thing they ask us. And we stumble. Because why? Because people know, Muslims don't know our history. We don't know anything. It's like, okay, did it happen in 2023? No, I don't know it. I apologize. Rather, we should be at the forefront of tariq. You go to any scholar's library, you come to my library, the biggest books you'll find are the books of history. You go to any Islamic library in the world, the biggest books that we have that are voluminous are books of history. But no one wants to open them. Everyone asks for the what? The mukhtasar. Do you have a summarized version? Just give me the concise version, just to the point version of the seerah. No one will ever understand the seerah of Rasulullah. No one can understand tariq unless the person actually go ahead and read Tariq al-Islam wa Wafayatul A'lam. It's a book of tariq, one book of tariq. It literally starts, like one version of it starts from this table, probably goes down to the wall. It's one book of tariq, one book of history. That's how much emphasis as Muslims we gave to history. But because the new generation, my generation, or the generation that came before us, say, you know what, who cares? You know how much resources we have at our fingertips? The phones. But no one wants to read anymore. So it's essential as Muslims, forget about us humans, as Muslims we know our history. We were people of ilm. We were people of knowledge. The whole revolution that came to medicine, who started that? Muslims. The first university ever made, Muslim. The first PhD program established, Muslims. Medical the revolution that took place in medicine, Muslims. Engineering, Muslims. Algebra, Muslims. The first bridge ever created, Muslims. The first big clock ever created, Muslims. It was always Muslims. The first person to draw the anatomy of the human body, Muslims. The first person that drew out all the arteries. Could you imagine all the arteries that are in a human body? All the blood vessels are in a human body. Muslims. The first country recently that invented blood transfusion with synthetic blood. Muslims, Turkey, the Turkish, just recently this happened. This is contemporary. This is all Muslims. Just a few years ago, I think a decade ago, Mecca announced that you have to be vaccinated if you come for Umrah. In Saudi, they announced that you have to be vaccinated. Indonesia took issue to it. They said, whoa, time out. This vaccine that you're requiring us to have to get there, it's made from impermissible ingredients. Porcine. We're not sending our Muslims to your country vaccinated with a haram vaccine. So what did they tell them? Figure it out. Saudi were like, look, we're going to cancel your permits for Umrah. It's not our problem. We have millions of other people coming. So what did Indonesia do? They came out with a permissible vaccine. Unfortunately, because we've become so complacent in the comfort of our homes, our backs aren't up against the wall. So we don't care. Oh, the golden era of Islam, it's history. But actually, this academia, PhDs, doctorates, medicine, engineering, mathematics, physics, philosophy, all of that was led by Juggernaut of Islam. All of it. The first person who came out with social health, meaning quote unquote Medicaid, Medicare, who came out with that first? Umar radiallahu anhu. If you read the mission statement of the UN, even though they're absolutely, utterly useless, if you read their mission statement, you know who they quote? Umar radiallahu anhu. He was the first person who came out with social justice. Why was it that Muslims were so progressive in everything they touched? But now we're like, paswa. People just lost all air and energy. I say this over and over again, and I always say this to youngsters. It's time that we take that back. That's something that was given to us by Allah. Could you imagine a nation that was illiterate? Didn't know how to read and write, didn't have libraries, didn't have doctors and universities and hospitals. Those same people that were absolutely illiterate became the most literate. But this is actually one of the signs of Qiyamah. Rasulullah ﷺ told the Sahaba that Qiyamah will not happen until majority of my ummah becomes literate. Ya Rasulullah, could you imagine? Put yourself in their shoes. They are the illiterate people. Ya Rasulullah, will a time come where all of us will be literate? Yes. But ignorance will be at its highest level. Majority of us, all of us will be literate, but ignorance will be at its highest level. Is that not the time that we're living in now? No one knows what's going on in Masjid al-Aqsa. Why is it a place of contention? What can we do about it? Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah Azza wa Jal, now I think people are starting to wake up. Hopefully it continues like this. The last thing that any of us would want is that the fire to extinguish. This fire should continue. Even if tomorrow they come out with a ceasefire, inshallah, and it stops and peace floods the lands, as Muslims, we should use it as a catalyst in our catapult that we continue to learn. We continue to educate our kids. We continue to get involved. Wallahi, sitting in the masjid doing dhikr will not protect us. If every single Muslim sat in the masjid and said, you know what, I'm just going to do my dhikr, a time might come that this person won't even be able to pray in the house of Allah. Because that's a fast, that's a tenet of sabr. What's patience? What's patience? Patience is not that Allah Azza wa Jal tests us and we just sit there and say, Ya Allah, we're going to be patient. That's not patience. Sabr is Allah Azza wa Jal testing a nation, and that nation making dua to Allah, knowing that I don't control the outcome. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what my du'as will do. I don't know what the result of my sadaqah will become. I don't know anything. But all I know is I have yaqeen on Allah. That's sabr. Knowing that you're tested and the future outcome you're oblivious to. No one knows. I can walk out of this masjid right now and get, la subhanallah, na'udhu get hit by a car and my life is over. It could be maybe a family member gets sick, or terminally ill. Now everyone in the family is sad. A thought sometimes comes to the mind, why my family? It happens. Allah Azza wa Jalla, we're weak. Allah has created us weak. But we're told not to say that. Why? Because we exercise patience. So what is patience? Allah tests a person and this person sits in sajda, falls into prostration, making dua to Allah, gives some sadaqah, helps others. He's doing all of this, but still he does not know what will happen. Absolutely no idea. Yes, he's hopeful. She or he may be hopeful that Allah Azza wa Jalla is Kareem. Allah is merciful. Allah will bless me. So this person, what does he continue doing? He's being tested, but he doesn't go and sit in the masjid and say, you know what? Qadar Allah masha. You know, Allah has destined what He destined. No, he makes dua. He goes for an umrah. He gives sadaqah. He helps those in need. He's doing taharruk. There's taharruk there. There's movement. Allah Azza wa Jal never told us to be complacent. That when something afflicts you, sit on your butt and say, you know what? Allah will figure it out. No, Allah is saying to move. Sahaba move. Could you imagine the Prophet ﷺ is telling the Sahaba that Rome will come under the flagship of Islam. That Yemen will come under the flagship of Islam. That Syria will come under the flagship of Islam. That Constantinople, Istanbul will come under the flagship of Islam. What did the Sahaba do? They moved. There was taharruk. There was ijtihad. There was going out in the path of Allah. That's sabr. That's patience. When a person says, you know what, I keep failing all my exams. I'm not getting into the college I want to get into. I can't get a job. You know what, screw it all. I'm just going to stay home and live in my mom's basement. This is not what the Prophet ﷺ taught anyone. On the contrary, someone might say, you know what, the whole world is a mess. These people in occupying state of Palestine, they're animals, they're inhumane. You know what, I'm taking my luggage, I'm going to take my sleeping bag, I'm going to jump into the nearest forest, the jungle. I'm going to jump into the jungle, make a little house for myself. I'm going to eat the fish from the river, and I'm just going to worship Allah. You will never find in any hadith, any ayah of Quran that Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling people to do this. It doesn't exist. Because Allah wants taharruk. He wants to see us activate, be progressive. He wants us to unite. He wants us to do things so we can protect others. But sometimes, unfortunately, we don't do it. Alhamdulillah, from the fadl of Allah Azza wa Jalla, from His karam, now we're starting to do that. But while doing that, it's important that we learn, that we educate ourselves, that we know what's the difference between what's taking place today and what happened in 1967. What happened in time of Umar radiallahu anh? What happened in time of King Herod? What happened in time of X, Y, and Z? It's important that we all learn this. So when we speak about Masjid al-Aqsa, we need to understand that Masjid al-Aqsa was not built by Sulaiman alayhi salam. It was built by, scholars have mentioned, it was the sons of Adam alayhi salam. They say either Adam alayhi salam or the sons of Adam alayhi salam. Why? There's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, Ya Rasulullah, what was the first masjid built? He said, Makkah, Kaaba. He said, what's the second one? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Masjid al-Aqsa. The smart question that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu asked was, Ya Rasulullah, what was the time difference? What was the time span between the creation of the two? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 40 years. Makkah was built, 40 years later, Masjid al-Aqsa was built. So there's no way to say that Masjid al-Aqsa was actually built by Sulaiman alayhi salam. It was first built by either Adam alayhi salam or his children. It's a difference of opinion. Then later on, Sulaiman alayhi salam rebuilt Masjid al-Aqsa. Now you might all say, whoa, time out. What happened? If Adam alayhi salam built Masjid al-Aqsa, if Adam alayhi salam or his children built Masjid al-Aqsa, and Adam alayhi salam built the Kaaba, where did the Kaaba and Masjid al-Aqsa go? Why did it have to be rebuilt? And the answer is, anyone know what's the answer? Yes, someone just said it. One is obviously time, but the second is the flood of Nuh alayhi salam. The flood of Nuh alayhi salam did not leave a single inch on the face of this earth. It covered everything. So obviously the flood of Nuh alayhi salam destroyed majority of the dunya, of the earth that we know it. It destroyed everything. So obviously as time went on, it would erode and disappear. And the flood of Nuh alayhi salam, ulama have mentioned that the flood of Nuh alayhi salam is what wiped out Makkah, what wiped out Masjid al-Aqsa. Later on, Dawood alayhi salam, the father of Sulaiman alayhi salam, was the one who actually made Jerusalem their headquarters. It was Dawood alayhi salam. Because remember, Dawood alayhi salam was the one who established the kingdom. It wasn't Sulaiman. Sulaiman came after. Dawood beat who in the Quran? Who knows it? Jalut. Good. It's in the Quran. Al Imran. At the end of the second juz. Dawood alayhi salam was the one who beat him. David versus Goliath. Dawood alayhi salam wins. He becomes the leader of the kingdom eventually after the king passed away. And Dawood established the markaz, the center of the kingdom in Jerusalem. So Dawood alayhi salam already established Islam there. It was actually Sulaiman alayhi salam who came forward and made dua to Allah. He made 3 du'as. The first dua he made, that, Ya Allah, I want you to give me such verdict that whenever I nullify or I basically put in a bill or a constitution, that verdict, that hukm is corresponding with your hukm. فَفَهَمْنَاهَا Sulaiman. Right? Allah Azza wa Jal told in the Quran that He made Sulaiman alayhi salam understand hikmah, wisdom. So that dua was accepted. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that dua was accepted. The second dua that Sulaiman alayhi salam did was that, the third dua, or the second dua that Sulaiman alayhi salam did was, Ya Allah, you give me such a kingdom that no kingdom afterwards would ever be able to imagine or even conceptualize such a kingdom. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah Azza wa Jal also gave that to Sulaiman alayhi salam. The third thing that Sulaiman alayhi salam made dua for in the hadith, Sulaiman alayhi salam told Allah that, Ya Allah, whoever performs salah in Masjid al-Aqsa, that, Ya Allah, whoever performs salah in Masjid al-Aqsa, Ya Allah, you make this person such that you forgive all of their sins as if the person is a brand new born baby. No sins, nothing. No major sins, no minor sins. Rasulullah ﷺ says, I have hope that Allah Azza wa Jalla will also accept this. That's why Masjid al-Aqsa is the third most holiest place in Islam. There's a hadith that in Mecca, when a person offers salah with jama'ah, it's 100,000 words. In Medina, 50,000. In Masjid al-Aqsa, 25 in one narration. In another narration, 1,000. In another narration, 1,000. But obviously, we take the higher, 25,000 in reward. Now, Sulaiman alayhi salam, the second dua he made was, Ya Allah, you give me a kingdom that no nation before me or no nation after me will ever be able to conceptualize. Now, what did Allah Azza wa Jal bless Sulaiman alayhi salam with? He was able to control winds. So by default, he was able to fly with his armies. 2, he was able to control the jinn. 3, he was able to speak languages. So he was able to communicate with birds. He was able to understand insects. Right? In Surah An-Naml it comes where he hears the ants. Sulaiman alayhi salam is flying over a nation and he hears the ants speaking. And Allah Azza wa Jalla loved it so much that He quoted the entire kind of dialogue of what Sulaiman alayhi salam said in the Quran. Why would Allah Azza wa Jal do this? To show the power of Allah. If Allah Azza wa Jal can give all of that to a human, imagine what Allah Azza wa Jal is capable of. So now Sulaiman alayhi salam, living in Jerusalem, he had humans create Masjid al-Aqsa. But not only humans. What made Masjid al-Aqsa remarkable was that he also had the jinn help create Masjid al-Aqsa. Now Masjid al-Aqsa is built. Obviously, we don't know exactly what year it was built. If you ask Orientalists, they would say 1000 NCE, meaning BCE, 1000 years before Common Era, that Masjid al-Aqsa was built. Sulaiman alayhi salam, now something very important. If you read any English book, any books of history in the English language, they will tell you who lived in Jerusalem. Jews. Every book of history says this to you. Jews. When you read books of history in Islam, in Arabic, they will tell you they were Bani Israel. Bani Israel were Muslims. Bani Israel, what does that mean? Bani means children. Israel is Yaqub alayhi salam. People think that Israel is Israel. That is incorrect. When Allah Azza wa Jal refers to Bani Israel in the Quran, He's referring to the children of Yaqub. Who was the children of Yaqub alayhi salam? Remember, it's Ibrahim alayhi salam. Then he had two kids, Ismail alayhi salam and Ishaq. Ishaq's son was Yaqub alayhi salam. Yaqub alayhi salam's lineage gave us Musa alayhi salam and everyone down. Dawood alayhi salam, Sulaiman alayhi salam, but Yusuf alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam. Everyone came from Ishaq, Yaqub's lineage. Only Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came from Ismail. Only Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we say Bani Israel, we actually mean Allah Azza wa Jalla is referring to Bani Yaqub alayhi salam, all of his descendants that came afterwards. So whoever lived in Jerusalem in the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam were Muslims. Bani Israel were Muslims. Yes, they were very contemptuous or very, I don't know what word to use here, but like chalak log. They were very, what's a good word? Clever, very clever people, very clever people. Like if Allah Azza wa Jal told them that, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran tells them, give sadaqah of a cow. Give sadaqah of a cow. They told Musa alayhi salam, you think we're kids? You think we're children? What do you mean give sadaqah of a cow? You're playing with us? You think you're making a joke? We took you as a prophet and now you're making jokes with us? He said, La wallah, this is what Allah told me to tell you. Give sadaqah of a cow. What's wrong with you people? Okay, fine. We agree. We'll give the sadaqah. What type of cow? Male, female? Okay, always the males. Okay, because the females give the birth, right? You can't, if you cut off all the females, you have no more cows. So you give the male. Okay, so you want us to give a cow. You want us to give a male cow. What color should the cow be? Like, yeah, what is wrong with you people? Why you just slaughter a cow? Oh, safra, okay. A little bit of a yellowish red cow. Okay, fine. Does the cow have to be of a specific age? You see where it's coming? That's why sometimes students of knowledge, they would tell you, stop acting like the people of Bani Israel. If someone tells you something, just do it. Give sadaqah. How much sadaqah should I give? Who should I give it to? What time should I give it? Is there a specific time and day I should give it? No, if Allah Azza wa Jalla says give sadaqah, give sadaqah. That is why a lot of the questions of riba are unanswered. This is the reason. Allah, I'm telling you the truth. Interest, usury, we actually as an ummah have very little knowledge of riba. And the reason why we don't have a lot of knowledge of it is because of Bani Israel. Umar radiallahu anhu, this is the last hadith in Sahih Muslim, and look it up if you don't believe me. If you go to the last hadith of Sahih Muslim, Umar radiallahu anhu himself, he says, I wish we asked Rasulullah more about riba. I wish we asked him more. But the reason why we didn't ask him was because of Bani Israel. They would ask, Allah would tell. They would ask, Allah would tell more. They would ask, so their lives actually became very difficult. Very difficult. So because out of fear of not making their lives difficult, the Sahaba wouldn't ask questions. They would actually wait for Badawis. They would wait for, the no lads, the people who have no homes, no lives, nothing. They live in the deserts. The nomads. The Sahaba would wait for them to come in. One time, this is a funny narration. A Badwi, because you can tell how a Badwi looks. Even here, sometimes someone comes in, you say this person is like a villager. He's from the Gowns. We don't know where this guy is from. So the Sahaba would literally wait for a random dude to walk into the masjid and say, Ya Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second they would hear this, they would all run into the masjid, because they know that they would never refer to the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Ya Muhammad, never. They would say, Ya Nabi Allah, Ya Rasulullah. But when they would hear Ya Muhammad, they would flee, run into the masjid, because they knew a good conversation was going to start. So they run into the masjid. It was like their ghasal. It was their announcement, because no Sahabi would ever speak to the Prophet of Allah like this. But Badwis would. So they would come around and sit. And a Badwi would ask questions, and he would be done. And a Sahabi would, keep going, like keep asking him questions. Even though sometimes they were against the etiquettes. But that was one of the only ways that the Sahaba would learn. Because they feared that they would make generations after their lives very difficult. For Sahaba, it was easy. Their iman was at a level where it wouldn't shake. But us, obviously, we're a little bit different. So, I don't know how we came to this. How do we... Okay, oh, Bani Israel, yes. So if you read books of history, they will always tell you, Jews, do not get confused. Because the Jews that they are referring to were 1,000,000% Muslims. Those who were the servants of Allah Azza wa Jal in the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam were absolutely Muslims. We just refer to them to Bani Israel. Like the Muslims in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how do we refer to them as? Sahaba, yes, but we refer to them something different, something very specific. Arabs. The Arabs of Islam, the Arabs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Arabs in the early Islam. It was Arab. It was always Arabs and Ajamis. There were the Arabs and then basically everyone else. So Bani Israel was just like that. Everyone who lived in Jerusalem were, in the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam, were Bani Israel. One more thing before I forget. Bani Israel became a group in whose time? This is what Kyrie Irving was referring to 2 years ago, where he got almost cancelled. This is important for us to know though. Okay, remember, Bani Israel we all know as Muslims in the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Obviously later on in times they deviated from the path. But in that time of Sulaiman alayhi salam, they were Muslims. Because Allah Azza wa Jal also in the Quran refers to them as Muslims, even though they're a bit clever. Now, Bani Israel were the children of who? Yaqub alayhi salam. So the descendants of Yaqub. When did Bani Israel actually unite? Who united them? Who? Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam in the time of Fir'aun. Where was Musa alayhi salam living? Egypt. Egypt is in what continent? Africa. Does that make sense? The true Jews, the true Bani Israel are from what continent? They're from Africa. 100. The true people, the people who actually have right of Palestine are the Jews from Africa. Now you might say, oh, tell me, you just said the word Jews. Yes, the Jews from Africa. After they migrated and they basically settled in Jerusalem with which prophet now? Which prophet actually helped them settle in Palestine? Not Dawood. Someone said it? Yusha. Yusha was the one, Yusha was the boy, the young man who Musa alayhi salam went and found Khidr. Okay? I know I'm like, I'll synchronize it inshallah so it's in a timeline. So remember, Bani Israel, all the descendants of Yaqub alayhi salam, they became united during the time of Musa alayhi salam. Allah commanded Musa to unite the believers. This is what He told him. Unite the believers and go to the Red Sea. Okay? Now, he's in Egypt and he flees east to the Red Sea. When Musa alayhi salam gets to the Red Sea, he sees the army of Fir'aun. The people, the followers, the mu'mins, the believers at the time of Musa alayhi salam said, Ya Kalim Allah, what's going to happen to us? Musa alayhi salam said, Allah Azza wa Jal is with me. Allah Azza wa Jal tells Musa, strike your staff. He strikes his staff, the Red Sea splits. Musa alayhi salam and his followers, they enter the Red Sea and they're now going up where? If you follow Egypt nowadays, it's still the same geography. They're following up, they go up into Jerusalem area, Palestine, Sham area. They go up to Sham, Fir'aun and his army, they enter the water. Obviously Allah Azza wa Jal closes the sea, destroys the army. Fir'aun is taken out of the sea. His body is taken out as evidence to show the ummah, show everyone that comes after, that we drown him and this is who he is, showing his body. Long story short, Musa alayhi salam now, living where he lives, they're like migrating, they're like nomads as well, they're just traveling. Harun alayhi salam passes away, Musa alayhi salam passes away. Yusha was the one who made them and established them in Jerusalem. Okay? Now Dawood alayhi salam comes, conquers major lands. Dawood alayhi salam makes his headquarters in Jerusalem. Dawood alayhi salam passes away. Sulaiman alayhi salam takes over and builds Masjid al-Aqsa. And now Bani Israel are in charge for hundreds of years as Muslims. Now the Jews of today who are very fair complexion, blue eyes, fair complexion, they are from Russia, Ukraine, Poland, that area, and they admit it. They admit it. They'll tell you themselves that we're not from Africa. That was what Kyrie Irving, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but that's what he was trying to, the true, pure Jews are actually from Africa, which is 100% true. Now, do you know Ancestry.com? You guys know Ancestry? There's another one too. What is the other one? I don't know. I know Ancestry.com. They are not. It's illegal for someone to take a genealogy test in Israel, like in occupating. I mean, many of you know this. They're not allowed to take it because the true Jews, the true Bani Israel, were from Africa. Now, when they take their test, it's not going to tell them they were from Egypt or Mauritania or Africa or Algeria. It's not going to tell any of that. It's going to tell them where they're from: Poland, Ukraine, Russia, from that area. So it's illegal for them to take that test. So that's something very, very important for us Muslims to understand, that if they want to place this argument in front of us that we have the birthright, well, no, you don't. Birthright was actually given to Bani Israel. I mean, no one has any birthright, but the right of Jerusalem was actually given to Bani Israel of Africa. Now you might say, well, time out, you just told us that the Jews of Africa were the ones who have actually first right to Jerusalem. Actually, a lot of them all became Muslims. Majority of them became Muslims, and we will come back to it at the time of the Al-Ahd al-Umariyah, of the Treaty of Umar radiallahu anhu. Why was it that they gave the keys of Jerusalem like that to Umar radiallahu anhu? Something was happening actually, the reason why they gave it to him. And because of that, a lot of the Jews who actually lived in Jerusalem became Muslims. So the Palestinians who are now living in Jerusalem, they're actually Semitic. They're the ones who have the right. Not the ones who migrated 60, 70 years ago from Poland or Ukraine or Germany. It was the ones who actually came there and lived there their entire lives, and maybe their forefathers or foremothers, they accepted Islam and now they're Muslims. So that's something very important to remember. Now, Sulaiman alayhi salam built Masjid al-Aqsa, and Allah knows best when that took place. Orientalists, what I have read is 1000 BCE, that 1000 years before Common Era. Before Common Era literally means before the birth of Isa alayhi salam. That's, the Jews don't do before Christ or after Christ because they don't believe in him, so they say BCE, before Common Era. 600, exactly 587, 586 before Common Era, because now we're going backwards, right? Every year we move along, we go 2003, 2023, 2024. How that worked, it comes backwards. So 1000, 900, 800, 700, 600, 500, and then 0 to Common Era, or the birth and death of Isa alayhi salam. Then you move on forward 100, 200, 300, which we are in now. We're in 14 or 2000, whatever we're in now, or 2023. So 586 is when the first time Nikhba Nasr. So at this time, Sulaiman alayhi salam has long passed away, and the kingdom that is in power is Babylon. When Sulaiman alayhi salam passes away, there was hints of sihr. There was hints of it. It was spoken about Islam, that there's something called magic. Sulaiman, and Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about this in the Quran. The test of magic wasn't given to the people of Sulaiman alayhi salam. It was given to the people of Babylon, right? Iraq, Sham, Syria area. It was given to them. They were told, don't accept it from us, to the two angels. But they accepted it anyways. They're like, look, this is a fitna. Allah is sending us to you as a test. Don't learn this from us. They said, you know what, we want to learn it. So they learned sihr. Sulaiman alayhi salam passes away. Babylon now becomes the controlling power of the nation, of the world. And they stayed in power for about 3-4 centuries. About 3-4 centuries, until they were overtaken by, anyone know who? The Persians. By the Persians. Long story short, 586, 587, Nikhba Nasr was the king of Babylon. They had no issues with Jerusalem, no issues. But what happened was, the Jews of Jerusalem at that time started to rebel. They started to rebel against the Babylonians. They lived in peace and harmony. But they said, you know, the taxations, the different difficulties, the embargoes that were placed on them, they said, they completely rebelled. So Nikhba-Nasr was a king of Babylon. He sends an army of 6,000 troops to Jerusalem. Now Jerusalem at that time, the first temple, this is what they call it, the first temple. When I say the first temple, when we say the first temple, we're talking about Masjid al-Aqsa built by Sulaiman alayhi salam. So it's 400 years later that this temple still exists. The Nikhba-Nasr sends his generals and 60,000 army members. Now, could you imagine, irony, imagine this is Jerusalem, comes to Jerusalem, and what does he do? He circles the entire Jerusalem, but he does not attack. I mean, obviously the general was a zalim himself, because there are rules to war. Even in Islam, people say this and they laugh. Even in Islam, there are rules to war. When a person goes to war, you can't just go outright start killing and burning. Like, if in Islam, if countries go to war, it is haram, impermissible for the Muslim army to start burning homes, burning places of worship, completely haram. So there's rules. Read Surah Tawbah. The rules are written in the Quran. Now, what he did was, the army of Nikhba-Nasr comes to Jerusalem and they circle Jerusalem. And what did they do? They didn't attack. They just shut down all the ports that came in. No food, no water, shut it all down. So what did they, basically, in essence, what they were trying to do was to starve them all. The irony of ironies. What are they doing now? It's literally the same exact thing they're doing now. What they went through, or they claim to have gone through thousands of years ago, they're doing to other innocent human beings. This army comes, circles, obviously, eventually, at some point, they're not going to have any food. Remember, this is not 21st century where you can just start planting things and make them. Jerusalem is desert. You walk out of the West Bank, it's all desert. I know a lot of us, a lot of the brothers here have gone. It's a lot of crossing through desert. And after centuries, after evolving and progressing, now they have like buildings and homes and stuff. But for the most part, it's all desert. How are you supposed to plant? Where are you supposed to get water if you're getting it only from this source for thousands of people that are living there? Now, at some point, the innocent people that were living in Jerusalem started throwing themselves over the fence. Now they had no choice but to fight. So now they're jumping over the fence and fighting. Obviously, you have on this side an army that's well-nourished, well-fed, trained, and prepared for weeks, and everyone inside has been starving for days. What do you expect is going to happen? They go in and destroy absolutely everything. Historians have mentioned you will not find a single remnant, anything, nothing from the first temple. They burned everything. The masjid of Sulaiman alayhi salam, they burned everything to the ground. Nothing was left. Zero. No western wall, no temple mount, nothing was left. Everything was destroyed. Now, the Jews that were able to kind of evacuate and flee, they just scattered all over the world. And this is all referred to in the Quran. I believe this incident was referred to in the Quran. The second one, I don't think so. Allah knows best. Now, the Jews, they scattered all throughout the world. This is 586 BCE, before Common Era. Remember, we're coming down to zero. Now, 530 BCE, the Babylonians were defeated. The king of Cyrus takes over, meaning Persia. The fire worshippers, the Majusis, they win, and now they're in control. The Majusis, the king of Cyrus of Persia, they are in control. And they allow the Jews to come back to Jerusalem. So contrary to common belief, it wasn't the king of Herod in 30 CE that built the second temple. Actually, the second temple, which exists till today, I'll explain it, was actually built by Jews after the Persians allowed them to come back. So now you can imagine, 586, the Sulaiman alayhi salam's Masjid al-Aqsa is destroyed. Everything of it is destroyed. The Jews scattered all over the world. 530, the Jews are allowed back in by the king of Persia. They start to come back in, flood. In around 30 CE, King Herod comes and he says, you know what, let's completely transform the Temple Mount. Or not the Temple Mount, sorry, because they're not allowed on the Temple Mount, and I'll get to that. They said, let's rebuild the first temple. So now King Herod builds the first temple. And at this time, the Romans are in power. And they are in power from that time all the way to the time of Rasulullah, they are in power. And this is in a nation that's in power for what? If you say 0 BCE, they came into power about 70 BCE. So about 7 centuries. 7 centuries, the Romans are in power. And in the Battle of Khandaq, right? When the people of Makkah, Quraysh, are coming to Medina, and the Quraysh are like, what do we do? Who gave them the idea of Khandaq? Salman al-Farsi. You see, everything is a full circle. Everything is a complete full circle. Salman al-Farsi from Persia tells Rasulullah ﷺ that, Ya Rasulullah, I remember a time where we did this in Persia. Against who? The Romans. So he says, Ya Rasulullah, let's make a trench so that they are not able to cross. So Rasulullah ﷺ says, this is a perfect idea, let's do it. So they make a trench. They're making a trench, and Rasulullah ﷺ hits a rock 3 times, and he says, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. And the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, what is this? What are you doing? He said, every time I struck, Allah Azza wa Jal showed me a vision of us conquering nations. And he mentioned 3 nations, but the one nation that was very interesting was the Roman nation. How the heck are people who are not able to beat the people of Quraysh, just a few thousand, 3,000, 2,000 people, we can't even face these people, and we're going to beat the armies of Rome? This is an empire that's been in power for 700 years. They've conquered majority of the world. How is it possible that the Byzantines, the Roman Empire, we're supposed to face them? And Rasulullah ﷺ is telling them it's going to happen. And it happened. غُلِبَتِ الرُّومِ Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions it in the Quran. The bet that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu made, it came true. So this all goes to show Allah Azza wa Jalla, me and you can prophesize. Maybe in like 15 minutes we're going to end up being wrong. Maybe in 15 years we're going to end up being wrong. Allah Azza wa Jal was never ever wrong, ever. You come across scholars, there are some scholars that love talking about Qiyamah, love it. Yajuj, Majuj is Hillary Clinton, and Majuj, I swear that someone said it's Putin, you know who it is? Like you can come up with all these prophecies, which is very interesting. Everyone's like, oh mashallah, such a wise scholar. And then you see like Hillary Clinton, what she did in Baghdad, in Baghdad, and what she did in Beirut, and you see all that she did, and then you're like, oh my God, he was so right. And then she doesn't end up becoming, she might just end up passing away in a fart into the wind. And she never became Yajuj Majuj. So they're interesting, but all the prophecies, all of them, that Allah Azza wa Jal and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made, all of them came true. Some of them are still left, but every single one of them came true. So now you could imagine such an empire, illiterate people from Makkah and Medina are destroying them. How? Allah made it happen. If Allah can make that happen, Allah can make this happen. Yes, we are not in a state of power. I'm being honest, unfortunately. Even though if you put all of our GDPs together, the Muslims are in power. We run the finance world. Kuwait has the highest GDP in the world. But unfortunately, we're the weakest people on planet Earth. We can't help ourselves. But if Allah Azza wa Jal is on our side, wallahi, we don't need anyone. We don't need the county executive. We don't need a president. Allah will make it happen Himself. Look at how many people are becoming Muslims. How many people are taking Shahada. Now, could you imagine now, the rhetoric is, the Muslims were always right. Could you imagine? People are now, not that I am sympathizing in any shape, form, no way possible, I'm not, but people are now sympathizing with who? Osama bin Laden. Could you imagine? With Mullah Umar. Could you imagine? Like, how is that possible? Because people's eyes are starting to wake up. Like, whoa, time out. It isn't black and white. There's more to it. That's why it's so important that as Muslims we educate ourselves. Yes, maybe our friends might not be educated. As long as we're educated, Allah Azza wa Jall's help will be with us. So now, around 70 Common Era, 70 CE, after Isa alayhi salam, 40 years after Isa alayhi salam is killed, Isa alayhi salam is crucified. Who did the Christians blame for Isa alayhi salam's crucifixion? The Jews, okay? Full circle, it's hilarious. They blame, the Christians blame the Jews. The Jews are living in Jerusalem. At that time, they're obviously in power. And now the Roman Empire comes and destroys the entire, basically Jerusalem. But they were at least a little bit human, a little bit more human than the Babylonians. The Babylonians were absolute animals. The Roman Empire just went in and just started fighting. And obviously the Jews in Jerusalem at that time put up a good fight. It wasn't that they just got destroyed. They put up a fight. Everyone fought. The books, I read two books. The third book I didn't read. I got the point. But both books told me that they put up a fight. Every innocent person fought. They had no choice at that point. They fought eventually under the general, the king Titus of Rome. Roman Empire obviously destroyed everybody, destroyed Jerusalem, and they destroyed the second temple. The only thing left, remnant of the second temple, is the western wall. Okay, now this is very important. Temple Mount. Does everyone know what Temple Mount is? Okay, if you go to Jerusalem, I know a lot of the brothers here have gone to Jerusalem. If you go into Jerusalem, everything in Jerusalem is built around a square rectangle. A rectangle. Okay, there's a rectangle, big land. Everything is built around it. Like the city is built around that. So if you go towards the northwest, you'll see like a massive graveyard. You see the markets. Now, imagine this is Jerusalem. The main entrance that everyone enters from for the most part, or the most prominent where you see the pictures. Now, if this is Jerusalem, this is the north. Right here is the north. My water here is the south. We pray towards this way. Because Makkah is over here, down here, okay? The dome of the rock, that gold masjid, musalla, whatever you want to call it, that you see is right in, kind of, not in the center, it's a little bit shifted towards the north. It's right here. Masjid al-Aqsa, that is not Masjid al-Aqsa. Very important to know. The dome of the rock, that gold, beautiful place that you see, is not Masjid al-Aqsa. It is not Masjid al-Aqsa. That is dome of the rock. That's okay. The Masjid al-Aqsa is actually here, right at the south border of the Temple Mount. This entire rectangle is considered Temple Mount, and I'll explain why it's called Temple Mount. Masjid al-Aqsa is right here. That's the masjid that was built in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. Okay, it's here. Dome of the Rock is here. Dome of the Rock is important because that's where Rasulullah ﷺ stood and he ascended into the heavens. So what happened? Rasulullah ﷺ led the Anbiya here. This is where he led the Anbiya in Salah. He leads all of the Anbiya along with Jibreel and Mikail in the Buraq while the Buraq is waiting. The Buraq is waiting where? Ulama have mentioned that the Buraq, the animal that the Rasulullah ﷺ was riding, was at the western gate. So if Masjid al-Aqsa is here, the western gate is here. If you go today, it's called the gate of Buraq. That's where Buraq was told to wait. Rasulullah ﷺ goes, leads the Anbiya, all the prophets in Salah. He gets, Jibreel is there as well, obviously. Walks up and ascends a rock. From that rock, he goes into the heavens. The journey of Mi'raj takes place. Isra is from Makkah to Jerusalem. Then Jerusalem to Rasulullah, to Allah Azza wa Jal is the Mi'raj. Now, why is this all important? Now, the only remnant that exists today that is of the second temple built by King Herod or the Jews prior to him is the wall of the western wall. It's this wall right here. You see a lot of Jews, they're like standing and then they're rocking back and forth. And the wall has like patches of like black scar. They say that the black ash is from the war that took place between the Roman Empire in 770 CE. This is what they claim, that this is the only wall that exists from the second temple, the second making of Jerusalem, not Masjid al-Aqsa, but Jerusalem. It's not, again I reiterate, it's not what Sulaiman alayhi salam created. Okay, now they believe, the Jews believe, this is what they believe, Muslims and Christians do not believe this. Okay, Christians believe something a little bit different. I'm going to explain all this and then we have to go back to Umar radiallahu anhu's Ahdiyah. So, Jews believe that Qiyamah basically will not happen until a Messiah comes and builds the third temple, the temple of Sulaiman alayhi salam, and he will build it built off the western wall. Okay? Now, Christians don't believe that. What Christians believe that the only way Isa alayhi salam will come to this dunya, the only way is if the state of Israel is established. Like it has to be permanently established. So that's why evangelical Christians are actually, again this is funny, and this is funny, but this is absolute facts, so I'm only stating facts. Evangelical Christians, which runs our nation, runs the government, is mostly evangelical Christians. There is a difference between Catholics and evangelical Christians and Protestants and Presbyterians. We'll get to all that. Evangelical Christians believe that Isa alayhi salam will not come down unless the state of Israel is established. So what are they doing? They're helping establish the state of Israel. Okay? That's what they're doing right now. So now, them helping to establish the state of Israel, Christians believe that once the state of Israel is 100% established, Isa alayhi salam will come down. When Isa alayhi salam, this is what Christians believe. When Isa alayhi salam comes down, the Christians and Isa alayhi salam will get together, and the first nation they will fight and destroy are the Jews. Could you imagine like the hypocrisy? Like how stupid? Like it makes zero sense. Now when you ask Jews, they're like, hey, we'll take all the help we can get. You know, our Messiah is coming. Their Messiah, or their Masih, is who? Dajjal. And you know, some scholars have mentioned 3 Messiahs or Messiahs actually came and they missed out on every single one. Isa alayhi salam came, they missed out on that one. Rasulullah sallallahu came, they missed out on that one. So it's like 3 strikes and you're out. So Dajjal is going to come, he's going to say, I'm the Messiah. They're like, you know what? If we strike on this one, we're really screwed. So they're like, you know, you have to be the one. So they actually believe that the Messiah or the Messiah that will come will establish the kingdom or the temple of Sulaiman alayhi salam. Now, they could establish Israel, no problem, whatever. I mean, I'm just hypothetically speaking. Their issue still is the Temple Mount, because in Judaism, they are not allowed to step foot on the Temple Mount. They're not allowed to. Like the Temple Mount is so divine that they are not allowed to enter that area. Thus, the reason why they worship from outside of the Western Wall. You see what I'm saying? But that all changed in 1967. The 6-day war that took place, they made a treaty that Jordan will be the waqf of Aqsa, that they will be responsible. The endowment will be given to Jordan, the Hashemites. They will be responsible of who is allowed in and out. But the actual security of the president, like the corridors of Masjid al-Aqsa, Israel, the Zionists will be in charge. Obviously, that's not the case, because now everything goes to the Zionists. Unfortunately, I mean, it is what it is. This is the situation we live in. They have taken control of everything. After that treaty, now they go. Their armies, their soldiers, they all go up to Temple Mount. Before, they never used to do that because it was against their religion. Now they're doing it left and right, no problem. Now, with that, obviously, there are conspiracy theories. I mean, Allah Azza wa Jal knows best, that they are digging under Masjid al-Aqsa. They are not digging under the Dome of the Rock. They could care less about that area. Even though it's the Temple Mount, it's still important. There are theories that they're building, that they're digging under Masjid al-Aqsa. Some theories, in the beginning, they said that we're doing it because we're looking for artifacts. If we can find any remnant of Sulaiman alayhi salam's kingdom. Obviously, it's not possible. It's been built on top already 2 times. Thousands of years have passed. Only Allah Azza wa Jal knows best, even if it still exists. But now today you hear like no one was allowed to pray in Masjid al-Aqsa, the Jumu'ah prayer. Obviously, it saddens every single believer. Our hearts should feel pain. That, Ya Allah, it's a disgrace for us that it's happening during our time. Wallahi. If it happened after we passed away, it's our children's problem. But on the day of Qiyamah, we will have to attest to the fact that we were believers and this was happening during our times. Now, one last important aspect of the entire Masjid al-Aqsa is the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. What happened? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, the first sign of the Day of Judgment is my death. Okay? And we spoke about this. Remember like a month ago? The first sign was my death. The second sign that he said was the conquering of Masjid al-Aqsa. Now you could imagine, just put yourself in their shoes. Masjid al-Aqsa at that time was controlled by who? The Roman Empire. So you taking control of Jerusalem literally means you're going to beat the Roman Empire, which was a juggernaut of a nation. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And it happened. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he passes away. The day Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was still alive. Okay? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was still alive. He's on his deathbed. Umar radiallahu anhu, somewhat basically what takes place is that Ammar ibn As radiallahu anhu and Abu Ubaidah, 2 generals, along with Khalid bin Walid was also another general, but he was not there at the time. So Abu Ubaidah al-Jarrah and Ammar ibn As, they're both there at Jerusalem. They told him that we can't give you the key. Bring the Khalifa. And Heracles, basically the king of Jerusalem, is telling them, we're going to give you the key of Jerusalem, but we can only give it to your Khalifa. We're not going to give it to you, your general. Call your Khalifa. They hear the news about this in Medina. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu can't go. He is on his deathbed. So Umar radiallahu anhu is Naib Khalifa. He is vice president. Umar radiallahu anhu, he takes 1 slave with him. 1 slave, and he gets on a camel and he goes with this 1 slave. No entourage, no army, no generals, nothing. Umar radiallahu anhu, with this one slave, he starts walking towards Jerusalem. And before he went on the journey to Jerusalem, he made an agreement with his slave. Not his slave, his servant. And he tells him that, listen, 50-50. 50% of the way, I'm going to be on the camel, and you will hold the reins. And the other 50%, you'll be on top of the camel, and I will walk you. So, okay. Eventually, they kept switching. Once they got near Jerusalem, the servant was actually on the camel. Umar radiallahu anhu was the one holding the reins. So the servant tells Umar, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, because at this moment, the second they enter Jerusalem, the moment Umar radiallahu anhu becomes the Khalifa, basically, right before he gets the key, he also becomes the Khalifa. He hears Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu has passed away. He was on his deathbed, he's passed away. So now he is the Khalifa, and now he is getting the key. But when he's walking into Jerusalem, he is the one holding the reins of the camel. And who sees him? Abu Ubaidah and Amr ibn As. They're like, what the hell is this? So Umar, why? First and foremost, what actually happened when Umar was holding the reins, like the line of the camel, walking towards Jerusalem, he fell in a mud puddle. He has 17 patches on his clothes and he's covered in mud. And he's the one holding the reins of the camel. And Abu Ubaidah is like, and the narration mentions that Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, Ameen al-Ummah, tells Umar radiallahu anhu that, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you've embarrassed us. How can you come to Jerusalem? This is the Roman Empire. They're giving you the keys to Masjid al-Aqsa. They're giving you the keys to one of the most magnificent cities that have ever existed in mankind. And you have 17 patches. You're covered in mud. And you're walking your servant into Jerusalem. And the famous line of Umar radiallahu anhu, he says to Abu Ubaidah and Amr ibn al-As, نَحْنُ قَوْمٌ أَعَزَّنَا بِالْإِسْلَامِ. He says, we are a nation that was gifted honor, gifted respect, gifted legacy through Islam. We weren't given respect because what these people think. We weren't given respect to the red carpet they've put down for us. We didn't gain respect and izzah because people looked at us and said, oh mashallah, these are respectable people. They look, mashallah, they're three-piece suit, tuxedos, nice shiny shoes. It wasn't because of this. Our respect, them all standing before us, is because of Islam. It's because of Allah. It's because of Rasulullah. It's because of the deen. I won't change the deen because of what these people think. I'm not going to change it. I made a commitment with my servant that this is our agreement. I'm not going to break this agreement for them. This is what I wear. This is the sunnah. Rasulullah had patches. It's an honor for me to have patches on my clothes. I choose never to remove these patches. And Umar would always have patches. It's the sunnah. The sunnah of Rasulullah is to have patches on his clothes. So he says, how is it that I change what honored me for these people? And now today is vice versa. Today if we meet in an elected official or something, we change everything about us. The way we talk to the person, we change. We fear, we shake to even say the name of Allah. We say God. Why? Out of respect for these people. Allah gave us izzah, legacy, honor to Islam. That's where honor will come. Wallahi, we can spend billions of dollars. I can spend millions of dollars for someone to love us. But if Allah chooses that this person won't love us, nothing can change that person's mind. But a person can be faqir, a poor person, miskeen, not a lot of wealth. But if Allah puts the love of His love in the hearts of people, everyone will love Him. The love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the love of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the love of Umar radiallahu anhu, the love of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And then he says, no, it's okay, it's totally fine. We are more honored that you came to us like how you came to the Bedouin, the Arabs. Yani when you came to Medina, you didn't change for us. So he hands over the key and he takes them into the church of Nazareth. Takes them into the church, and while they're in the church, Dhuhr Azan happens. Dhuhr Azan takes place. The bishop tells him that, Heraclius tells him that, you know what, you can pray your Zuhr here, pray it here. Umar radiallahu anhu is like, no. He's like, if I pray Dhuhr here, a time will come, Muslims will come later on and make this place into a masjid. So he walks out, and imagine this is Masjid al-Aqsa. The Masjid al-Umar is right here. Until this day it exists. This is where he prayed. It set a precedent for all mankind. The Al-Ahd al-Umariya, Al-Ahdiyat al-Umariya, that the treaty that Umar radiallahu anhu stipulated that any house of worship, any churches, any synagogues, they are to remain as is. If you are a Christian, you remain as a Christian. you continue worshipping how you worshipped in the past. If you are a Jew, you continue worshipping as a Jew. If you went to your synagogue, you continue worshipping as in the synagogue. If you had government set up where judges will rule in your, meaning with your Torah, or judges will rule with the Bible, let it continue. It does not change. And it's the social justice of Umar radiallahu anh. Whenever a dispute would take place between two Jewish people, he would call a rabbi and say, what does your religion say about it? Who did that first? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. People were judged according to their religion. People were shown honor and respect. Who stipulated that? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who did Umar radiallahu anhu learn that from? The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that continued in Jerusalem. The Christians continued living as Christians. The Jews continued living as Jews. It was complete justice and adala throughout. Unfortunately, later on, I mean, even in the time of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, when he came in, he didn't kill crusaders. He didn't tell even though the crusaders, the Romans, the Christians, they had a huge part in that. But he says, no, you continue worshiping as is. The Jews continue worshiping as is. There was respect, there was dignity, there was honor. That's what Allah Azza wa Jal established in Islam. That's what the Prophet ﷺ set as a precedent for every nation that was to come to establish. And in do right, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah did the exact same thing. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal, I wanted to wrap up Masjid al-Aqsa and then go into Yajuj Majuj. I've been going on for 50 minutes now. But always remember, as Muslims, every part of our history, learn it. It's very important that we understand it. Because as Muslims, we were the ones who, when the Holocaust happened, who opened up their doors for the Jewish people? Muslims. Why didn't England open up their doors? Why didn't America open up their doors? We were the ones who opened up their doors to them. We were the ones who welcomed them. We were the ones who hosted them. They were our guests. Obviously, many things happened. As you know, in 1948 wasn't that bad, but 1967 was the biggest issue, the first Nakba that took place. Obviously, oppression took place. But as Muslims, not as Afghanis, not as Pakistanis, not as Indians, not as Arabs, not as Africans, as Muslims, our number one quality is to host people. This is who we are. Allah Azza wa Jalla has built this in our genes. When a person says they're Muslims, it's just in our nature that we want to host people. We want to honor them. We want to bring them to our houses. Whether they're Christians, whether they're Jews, whatever they are. Because this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. This is what Umar radiallahu anhu did. This is why Allah chose the Arabs. This is actually why Allah Azza wa Jalla chose the Arabs. Because of their karam and their jood. They were known for their hospitality. They were known for sheltering strangers. So even if we have a neighbor who's Jewish, or even if we have a neighbor who's Christian, wallahi, we should go out of our ways to respect and honor them. We host them, we gift them things, we give them whatever we can. The times of the Eid come around, we give them things. Because it's possible that tomorrow they can become Muslims. Tomorrow we can become the reason why they accepted Islam. Yes, I know propaganda, CNN news, it makes us, the Jews versus the Muslims. This is not what it is. That's not the case. It's humans versus oppression and the oppressors. So don't think that it's Muslims versus Jews, because it is not like that, and it will never be like that. Even when Isa alayhi salam comes, it's not against Muslims versus Jews. It's good versus evil. That's all it is. So always become a source of khair for your neighbors. Honor them. You see someone wearing an Israeli flag, don't get all flustered. Respect them. Show them what Islam is. Show them what the traits of Umar radiallahu anhu were, what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam established. Make them love Islam. That, damn, this person is a Muslim. I'm like disrespecting him, making fun of him and telling him all these things, and he's showing me nothing but love. And who was the first person who did this? The first person in the face of absolute disrespect and dishonor showed nothing but kindness and love. Who was the first person? Who? Okay, not Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's in the Quran. Yasin. Nope. Musa alayhi salam. Could you imagine the full circle? It was Musa. Who said it? Muzamma? I didn't hear you. It was Musa alayhi salam. Who did he do it to? Fir'aun. Fir'aun, he says, وَمَا رَبُّكَ ya Musa. That, oh Musa, what is your Rabb? When you ask someone who is something, you say, Mar Rabbuka. Who is your Rabb, right? The question in the grave is, Man Rabbuka. Fir'aun didn't even say that. He said, Ma Rabbuka. What is your Rabb? What we use for غَيْرُ عُقُول, things that don't have intellect, like walls, rocks, trees, paper, tools. they don't have intellect. They don't have aql. They can't respond to you. Fir'aun is saying that, what is your Rabb? And Musa alayhi salam responds to him and says, my Rabb is the one who created the heavens and the earth. Are you crazy? Did your Rabb send a crazy person? No, he sent someone with the message. Read Surah Shura. It's all there. This is the quality of Musa alayhi salam, of Bani Israel doing it to Fir'aun. We are the ones who love Musa alayhi salam the most. Let's start inculcating his qualities into our lives. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal that He allows us to become beacons of hope and khair. We ask Allah that He makes us sources of hidayah for every single human being. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal that He allows us to inculcate the sunnah of Musa alayhi salam, the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the sunnah of Umar radiallahu anhu and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu into our lives. We ask Allah that He makes us leaders like Umar radiallahu anhu and Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. And the most important things that Allah Azza wa Jal allows all of our brothers and sisters in Palestine to live free, to live under salama and khair and peace and piety. We ask Allah that He showers nothing but tranquility and peace upon them. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal that He blesses them with victory over the oppressors in this dunya and in the akhirah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal for tawfiq. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Just one. Go ahead. Can you use the mic? Go. Inshallah. Mm. Awesome.